Number 14 on this list was a chainsaw sold by a mail-order auto parts company that never manufactured a single one of its own tools. Number 22 was a television set built by a company most people have never heard of, sitting in a wood cabinet in a living room that no longer exists. And number 29 was so cheap, so common, so bolted into the memory of every kid on the block that when the company finally stopped stamping the name into steel, an entire way of growing up in America went with it. 30 products, every one of them gone. If you had a father or a grandfather who trusted a store instead of a brand, you owned every single one of these. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next video, because we're just getting started on bringing back the brands this country quietly buried. Number 1. Wizard. Sold starting in the 1930s. Western Auto never forged a single wrench. They contracted manufacturers like Barcelo and Volchek to build them, then stamped their own name on the steel. What most people do not know is that Wizard tools were built to a private specification, not a public one. That meant no 2 decades of Wizard wrenches were made by the same company. The tapered box end design that made them recognizable was actually developed by a supplier, not by Western Auto itself. Cold steel, grease worked into the knurled handle, a drawer that stuck a little in July. Your father kept the 1/2 and the 9/16 separate from the rest because he used them the most. Western Auto stopped house branding tools in the 1970s as private label manufacturing consolidated. The name outlived the wrench. Nobody making them anymore even remembers who did. The next tool in that drawer was not a wrench at all, and it was the one your father trusted with his own hands. Number 2. Wizard. Sold through Western Auto catalogs since the 1940s. A steel case, a ratchet, and sockets sized for engines that don't exist anymore. What most people don't know is that these sets weren't sold as tools. They were sold as insurance. A man who owned a full Wizard socket set was a man who never had to call anyone for help. The case itself, dented and scratched, became a kind of family heirloom nobody ever meant to keep. The click of the ratchet in a cold garage, the smell of the oiled steel case, a missing 7/16 socket that was never replaced, just worked around. Your father knew exactly which drawer, which slot, blind. Western Auto quietly stopped restocking full sets by the mid-1970s. The real reason was that cheaper import tool sets undercut them before anyone noticed the quality had already dropped. The next item wasn't in the toolbox, it was under the hood, and it kept the whole car alive. Number 3. Tough One. Western Auto's house battery brand, sold from the 1950s through the 1970s. Built by outside manufacturers, badged and warrantied by the store on the corner. What most people don't know is that the name wasn't marketing. Western Auto genuinely competed on warranty length, not just price. A Tough One battery came with a promise that if it failed, you brought it back to the same counter you bought it from, no receipt necessary. The smell of acid and cold metal. Frozen breath over an open hood on a January morning. The click of jumper cables. Your father cursing quietly, checking the terminals with his bare hand. As national battery brands consolidated distribution in the 1970s, house brands like Tough One lost shelf space. The real reason it died was that a handshake warranty couldn't compete with a franchise supply chain. The next item didn't start the car. It kept it from sliding off the road. Number 4. Davis. Western Auto's private label tire brand, sold since the 1940s, named for company co-founder Don Abner Davis. What most people don't know is that Western Auto priced Davis tires deliberately below name brand competitors to drive foot traffic into stores that also sold everything else on this list. The tire was the bait. The wrench set was the sale. White walls going gray with road film. The specific thump of a slightly out-of-round tire on a gravel driveway. Your father kicking each one before a road trip, out of habit more than diagnosis. Auto parts fell to a shrinking share of Western Auto's sales by the mid-1960s. The real reason was that the store that sold everything eventually stood for nothing in particular. The next item didn't touch the road at all. It kept the engine breathing. Number 5. Wizard. Store brand spark plugs, sold alongside filters and belts at the counter of every Western Auto location. What most people don't know is that these plugs were rebranded from the same handful of national manufacturers that supplied the brand names. The difference was margin, not metal. A man buying Wizard plugs wasn't cutting corners. He just didn't see the point in paying for someone else's advertising. A cardboard box with a plug rattling loose inside. The gap gauge kept in the same drawer, always slightly bent. Your father setting the gap by eye first, then checking himself. By the 1970s, national parts chains undercut house brand ignition parts on price and availability. The real reason it disappeared was that the corner store couldn't outstock a warehouse. The next item lived in that same drawer, and it never once got the credit it deserved. Number 6. Wizard. Western Auto's house motor oil, sold in tin cans with a triangular spout punched by hand at the counter. What most people don't know is that many house brand oils in this era were refined and blended by the same suppliers as the national names, sold under a private label purely to keep the customer walking back through the same door every 3 months. The hiss of the spout punch, the specific orange stain that never fully left the garage floor. Your father wiping the dipstick on a rag that had been white once, decades ago. Quick lube chains and self-serve gas stations made in-store oil changes obsolete by the late 1970s. The real reason it died was that convenience finally beat loyalty. The next item wasn't for the engine. It was for keeping the whole car looking like it mattered. Number 7. Wizard. Sold by the yard and by the set, custom fitted at the counter for whatever car you drove in. What most people don't know is that seat covers in this era weren't a luxury accessory. They were protection for an interior that had to last the life of the car, because trading in early wasn't something most families could afford. Clear vinyl over a bench seat, cold in December, sticking to bare skin in July. The specific plastic smell baking in a closed car. Your mother smoothing the cover flat before every long drive. As factory upholstery improved and cars were traded in faster through the 1970s, the aftermarket cover business shrank. The real reason it died was that nobody protects a car they don't plan to keep. The next item wasn't for the car's protection. It was for the smallest passenger inside it. Number 8. Tot seat. Sold across Western Auto's catalog for under $1 in the early 1960s, a canvas sling that hooked over the front bench seat. What most people don't know is that this wasn't a safety device by any modern definition. It was a convenience seat designed to keep a toddler upright and visible, not to protect them in a collision. It predates federal child restraint standards by more than a decade. A canvas strap over the seatback. A small steering wheel bolted to the tray in front, spinning uselessly. Your mother glancing sideways at every stop sign, out of instinct, not requirement. Federal child safety seat standards in 1971 made devices like this obsolete almost overnight. The real reason it died was that the country finally admitted convenience and safety were never the same thing. The next item didn't ride inside the car. It powered something on the water instead. Number 9. Wizard. Western Auto sold outboard boat motors under its own name from the 1950s into the 1960s, manufactured for them under contract. What most people do not know is that Western Auto never built an engine of any kind. Every Wizard outboard was made by an outside manufacturer and simply rebadged, a pattern that ran through nearly every product on this list. The smell of two-stroke exhaust drifting over lake water. The specific pull cord jerk that either caught or did not. Your father swearing softly, trying a third time before anyone in the boat said anything. Western Auto exited small engine manufacturing partnerships by the early 1970s as outboard motor makers moved to direct dealer networks. The real reason it died was that the middleman got cut out of his own business. The next item stayed on dry land, but it worked just as hard. Number 10. Wizard. A full line of push and self-propelled mowers sold through Western Auto stores, starting in the 1950s. What most people don't know is that Western Auto's mower lineup was extensive enough to rival dedicated hardware chains, with multiple horsepower classes and reel and rotary models, sold with financing plans most families used without thinking twice. The specific pull start cough before the engine caught. Fresh cut grass stuck to canvas sneakers. Your father checking the oil with a rag kept just for that one job. By the 1970s, dedicated lawn and garden retailers out-merchandised general stores on selection and service. The real reason it died was that a store that sold everything couldn't specialize in anything. The next item cut through dirt instead of grass, and it broke more backs than it saved. Number 11. Wizard. Rear tine and front tine garden tillers sold through Western Auto into the 1970s and 80s, long after most of the company's other outdoor equipment had disappeared. What most people don't know is that tillers were among the last Wizard-branded products still sold new, a quiet holdout from a much larger catalog that had already been dismantled around it. The specific vibration up both arms on hard clay soil, diesel and turned earth in the same breath. Your father walking behind it in a straight line he was strangely proud of. Western Auto's outdoor power equipment line was phased out through the 1980s as the company's focus narrowed back to auto parts. The real reason it died was a slow retreat, not a single ending. The next item ran on gas too, and it cut down more than grass. Number 12. Wizard. Chainsaws sold under the house brand from the 1960s through the 1970s, built by outside manufacturers under contract, like everything else in the line. What most people don't know is that Western Auto's chainsaw line briefly competed directly with dedicated saw manufacturers on price alone, undercutting them by selling through a network that already had a customer's trust. The specific two-stroke shriek across a quiet yard, sawdust catching in a shirt collar, your father checking the chain tension with his thumb before every single cut, without fail. Dedicated power tool brands overtook house-branded saws on safety features and dealer support through the 1980s. The real reason it died was that a rebadged saw couldn't out-engineer a specialist. The next item didn't leave the house at all. It kept the family cool through a summer with no air conditioning. Number 13. Wizard. An 8-inch electric desk fan sold through Western Auto's home goods counter, a small piece of a much larger appliance catalog most people forget the store ever carried. What most people don't know is that Western Auto, by the late 1950s, had effectively become a general store wearing an auto parts sign, with appliances, tools, and toys sold under the same roof and the same house name. The specific hum and click of the oscillation motor, a ribbon tied to the cage to watch it move, your grandmother positioning it at exactly the same angle every single evening. Appliance retailers and department stores absorbed this category through the 1960s and 70s. The real reason it died was that a small fan couldn't justify shelf space against a chain that specialized in nothing but appliances. The next item kept food cold instead of people, and it took up half the garage. Number 14. Wizard. A line of chest freezers sold through Western Auto, marketed to families who wanted to buy meat in bulk and store it through the winter. What most people don't know is that freezer ownership in this era was tied to a broader shift in how American families shopped, with fewer trips, bigger purchases, and a garage that slowly turned into a second kitchen. The specific hum that never quite stopped, even at 2 in the morning. Frost built up thick enough to need a screwdriver. Your mother keeping an inventory list taped to the lid, updated in pencil. As dedicated appliance chains and department stores expanded through the 1960s, Western Auto's appliance lines lost ground on selection and price. The real reason it died was that a general store competing against a specialist always loses eventually. The next item didn't cool anything. It typed the letters that held families together across distance. Number 15. Wizard. Portable typewriters sold through Western Auto, manufactured for them under contract by Brother Industries of Japan and rebadged for the American market. What most people don't know is that most customers had no idea Wizard wasn't a manufacturer at all. Brother built the machine start to finish and simply left its own name off the case. The specific clack and carriage return bell, ink-stained fingertips from changing a ribbon, your mother typing a letter at the kitchen table, one finger hovering before every capital. Brother shifted toward exporting typewriters and other machines under its own name by the mid-1960s, ending many of its private label contracts. The real reason it died was that the manufacturer finally realized its own name was worth more than the store's. The next item came from that same manufacturer, and it stitched together more than sentences. Before we continue, tell me in the comments which one of these your family actually owned. Was it the wizard socket set your father never let you touch, the tot seat you rode in before anyone thought twice about it, or a wizard typewriter that clacked away at the kitchen table? I read every single one. I want to know. Number 16. Wizard. Sewing machines sold through Western Auto in the 1950s and into the 1960s. Another product quietly built in full by Brother Industries and simply relabeled. What most people do not know is that Western Auto dropped its entire sewing machine line by the end of the 1960s, right as Brother pivoted to building its own export brand instead of badging machines for American retailers. The rhythmic clatter of the foot pedal. A pincushion shaped like a tomato, kept on the same shelf for decades. Your grandmother letting out a hem while you sat on the floor and watched the needle. Western Auto discontinued the sewing line in the 1960s as demand for home sewing machines weakened nationally. The real reason it died was that the company that made them stopped needing the store that sold them. The next item did not sit on a shelf. It sat in the living room, and it was the center of the whole house. Number 17. True Tone. Western Auto's house electronics brand, sold through catalogs by the early 1960s, a small radio that fit in a shirt pocket and changed how a family listened to the world. What most people don't know is that a 1962 Western Auto catalog still survives, showing an entire page of True Tone transistor radios, a snapshot of a moment when portable electronics were still novel enough to sell alongside socket wrenches and seat covers. The static before a station locked in. A single earphone, warm from being held too long. Your brother holding it against his ear on the school bus, volume down so no one could hear. True Tone electronics faded from Western Auto's catalog through the 1970s as dedicated electronics chains took over the category. The real reason it died was that a general store couldn't keep pace with an industry that changed every year. The next item from that same brand sat much bigger and much longer in one room of the house. Number 18. True Tone. Wood cabinet console television sold through Western Auto, the largest and most expensive item most families ever bought from the store. What most people don't know is that True Tone televisions were sold as furniture as much as electronics, built into cabinets designed to match a living room, not just to display a picture. The specific warm-up hum before the picture appeared. Rabbit ears adjusted a quarter inch at a time. Your whole family arranged in a semicircle, facing one glowing box every single night. As dedicated electronics retailers and manufacturer direct dealers dominated television sales through the 1970s, True Tone disappeared from Western Auto's shelves. The real reason it died was that a store built around a car could not hold on to a business built around a screen. The next item from that same brand made the sound that filled the room after the television was finally switched off. Number 19. True Tone. Console and portable record players sold through Western Auto, often bundled with the television line under the same house name. What most people don't know is that these hi-fi sets were frequently sold on the same installment credit plans as tires and batteries. A family could finance a record player the same way they financed a set of Davis tires. The needle drop and half-second of static before the music started. A stack of 45 records left slightly warped near a radiator. Your sister guarding the volume knob like it belonged to her alone. The category left Western Auto's shelves alongside its television line through the 1970s. The real reason it died was the same one that killed the console television. A general store lost its grip on electronics for good. The next item wasn't electronic at all. It was for a father who wanted to keep something bigger than the family safe. Number 20. Citation. Western Auto's house brand major appliances, sold from the 1950s into the 1960s. another line manufactured under contract and rebadged at the store. What most people don't know is that Citation Appliances put Western Auto in direct competition with Sears, the very company that would eventually buy Western Auto outright in 1988, ending the rivalry by absorbing it. The specific rhythmic thump of an off-balance load. Bluing poured carefully into a small cup. Your mother standing over it, listening for the sound that meant something was wrong. Citation Appliances disappeared from Western Auto's catalog by the early 1970s as the company narrowed back toward its automotive core. The real reason it died was that the store finally admitted it couldn't out Sears. The next item from that same brand kept food cold in a kitchen that has long since been remodeled. Number 21. Citation. Full-size refrigerators sold through Western Auto's appliance catalog, priced to compete directly with the national department store chains. What most people don't know is that these refrigerators were often the single largest purchase a young family made after a car, financed through the same store, on the same counter, by the same salesman who'd sold them their tires. The specific rubber gasket suction of the door closing. A produce drawer that never quite sealed right. Your mother rearranging it every Sunday before the week's groceries went in. Citation was discontinued alongside the rest of Western Auto's major appliance line by the early 1970s. The real reason it died was that a company trying to be everything to everyone eventually has to choose. The next item wasn't for the kitchen, it was for the closet, and for a kind of trust nobody questioned back then. Number 22. Revelation. Western Auto's house firearms brand, sold through the store's catalog and counter from the 1950s into the 1970s. A detail almost no one under 60 remembers about an auto parts chain. What most people don't know is that buying a shotgun from Western Auto in this era required little more than walking up to the counter. Mail order and in-store firearm sales were standard practice for general retailers before federal regulation tightened in 1968. Gun oil and cold-blued steel. A cardboard box that smelled faintly of cardboard and Cosmoline. Your father cleaning it at the kitchen table on a Sunday, newspaper spread underneath. The Gun Control Act of 1968 ended mail-order firearm sales nationwide, and general retailers exited the firearms business over the following decade. The real reason it died was that the country decided a hardware store counter was the wrong place to sell a gun. The next item from that same brand was smaller, but it taught just as much. Number 23. Revelation. Single-shot and bolt-action .22 caliber rifles, often a boy's first gun, sold under Western Auto's house name for a fraction of the cost of a name-brand equivalent. What most people do not know is that store-brand rifles like these were considered the entry point for an entire generation, with plain birch stocks, no scope, nothing extra, built to be functional rather than fine. The smell of gun oil on a rag kept just for that purpose. A cardboard box of shells rattling in a coat pocket. Your father walking a few paces behind you in a field, saying almost nothing. Western Auto exited the firearms business through the 1970s as regulation and liability made general retail sales impractical. The real reason it died was that a rite of passage that a hardware counter simply could not carry anymore. The next item from that same brand was meant for protection, not for teaching. Number 24. Revelation. Western Auto's private label handguns, sold alongside the rifles and shotguns, manufactured under contract and rarely discussed today, even by people who remember the rest of the store. What most people do not know is that these revolvers, once valued below their name brand equivalents, are now nearly identical in price to the brands they were built to undercut. Collectors closing a gap that retail pricing never intended to exist. A drawer that stayed locked, the key kept somewhere only your father knew. The specific weight of it in a hand too young to hold it steady. A conversation had exactly once and never repeated. Federal firearms law changes through the late 1960s and 1970s pushed general merchandisers entirely out of the gun trade. The real reason it died was that America decided some products did not belong next to spark plugs and seat covers. The next item was for a child, not a father, and it is the one most people actually remember. Number 25. Western Flyer. Western Auto's bicycle brand, trademarked in 1931 and sold continuously for nearly 70 years, manufactured by outside companies and badged at the store. What most people don't know is that Western Flyer wasn't just a bicycle line. It was the closest thing Western Auto had to a lasting identity, outliving nearly every other house brand on this list by decades. The specific rattle of a chain guard, playing cards clothes pinned to the spokes, your father lowering the seat 2 inches, promising it would fit again by summer. The Western Flyer trademark was formally canceled after the brand quietly stopped being manufactured in the late 1990s, and Western Auto itself was sold off in pieces starting the same year. The real reason it died was that the store finally ran out of things left to sell under its own name. The next item from that same brand carried you before the bicycle ever did. Number 26. Western Flyer. The company's line of steel pull wagons sold as a direct house brand competitor to Radio Flyer for decades. What most people don't know is that Western Auto positioned Western Flyer wagons specifically against the national leader, matching the size and steel body construction almost feature for feature at a lower price through a store that already had your family's trust. Steel wheels loud on a sidewalk, red paint chipped down to bare metal at the corners, your older sibling pulling you around the block a little too fast on purpose. Western Flyer wagons disappeared from shelves as Western Auto's toy and general merchandise lines wound down through the 1980s and 90s. The real reason it died was that the company that sold it stopped being a place that sold toys at all. The next item from that same brand only ran for a few years, but nobody who owned one forgot it. Number 27. Western Flyer. Pedal-powered cars and miniature tractors sold through Western Auto's toy catalog, scaled-down versions of the machines their fathers actually drove and worked. What most people don't know is that these pedal vehicles were sold with the same seriousness as the real automotive line, cataloged, priced, and displayed in Western Auto stores as if a 5-year-old were a genuine customer. Chipped enamel paint on a steering wheel too big for small hands, the specific squeak of a chain drive on concrete. Your father crouched down, showing you exactly how far to push. The pedal vehicle line was discontinued as Western Auto's toy catalog shrank through the 1970s and 80s. The real reason it died was that a store rebuilding itself around auto parts alone had no room left for a child's imitation of one. The next item from that same brand didn't roll on wheels at all. Number 28. Western Flyer. Metal clamp on roller skates sold through Western Auto's toy and sporting goods counter, adjustable to fit any shoe with a simple metal key. What most people don't know is that these skates required no boot of their own. They clamped directly onto a child's regular shoes, a detail that made them cheap enough for nearly every family in the country to own a pair. The metallic grind of steel wheels on a sidewalk, a skate key worn smooth, worn on a string around a small neck. Your mother tightening the clamp one more turn before letting you go. Clamp-on skates were phased out industry-wide as molded boot skates took over through the 1970s. The real reason it died was that a design built for affordability lost to a design built for comfort, and comfort won. The next item from that same brand was the last thing this store ever really gave a generation of kids their freedom on. Number 29. Western Flyer. Simple steel kick scooters sold through Western Auto, a small, forgettable purchase that quietly defined an entire summer for millions of American kids. What most people don't know is that a scooter like this cost only a few dollars in the early 1960s, making it one of the cheapest items in the entire Western Flyer catalog, and for many families, a child's very first purchase made with their own saved allowance. The rattle of steel wheels over cracked pavement, a rusted footplate that left a mark on bare feet. Your friends waiting at the end of the driveway, not saying a word, just waiting. The scooter line quietly disappeared from Western Auto's shelves as the toy division shrank through the 1980s, folded into a company that no longer remembered why it had started selling toys in the first place. The real reason it died was that nobody was left inside the company to miss it. And the last item on this list wasn't a product at all. It was the store that sold you every single one of them. Number 30. Western Auto. Founded in 1909 in Kansas City, Missouri, by George Pepperdine and Don Abner Davis, a mail-order auto parts business that grew into the store that sold America almost everything else on this list. What most people don't know is that Western Auto stopped being primarily an auto parts company decades before it disappeared. Auto parts made up only a small share of its sales by the mid-1960s and had nearly vanished by the 1970s, even as the sign out front never changed. The bell over the door, linoleum floors that smelled faintly of rubber and machine oil. Your father, standing at the counter, calling the clerk by his first name, the way you called a neighbor. Beneficial Finance bought the company in 1961. A leveraged buyout took it back in 1985. Sears bought it in 1988. Advance Auto Parts bought it from Sears in 1998. By 2003, the name was gone from every corporate store in the country. The real reason it died was that a company that once sold you everything eventually had nothing left that was only theirs. These products didn't wear out. They weren't replaced because something better came along. They were quietly discontinued by a company that kept selling off pieces of itself until there was nothing left to sell. Which one of these was sitting in your garage, your closet, your driveway? Not the object itself, the moment standing next to it. What does remembering it actually bring back? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe, because there is a lot more of this country left to remember.